Welcome back to another video. Hopefully I can turn this into a series of videos. But what this is going to really be over is going over my personal builds to sniper rifles that's in Modern Warfare. Really the most like or like preferred uh, builds that I'll be using. They're mostly going to be going over these three sniper rifles, the two bolt action snipers, the Rytec AMR. And I'm going to skip out on the Dragunov because it's a bit different, and I'll go over the reasons why in a little bit. But I want to make this video primarily going over these three snipers and my class setups for all three of them all in one. And after that, I will be going over to select a few marksman rifles, which will be the Mark II carbine, the Kar 98K, and the SPR 208, because all of these guns have the potential of getting a one-shot kill in the upper chest and up. The crossbow does have a one-shot kill anywhere in the body, but doesn't really count as a sniper. Unless you guys do want me to make a video off of that, I can do that. And I can kind of make it to where it's like more or less a three-part deal. I can also go over like, the sniper version of the 725 shotgun, more for like the specialty kind of guns for that. But I'll see what you guys think about that down in the comments. But yeah, so I'm going to be going over the SPR, the Kar 98K, and the Mark II carbine in the next video. I'll be skipping out on the EBR 14 and the SKS due to them having the potential of still getting a one-shot kill, but that only applies to the actual head of a player. So it does take a little bit more accuracy to hit, and they're mostly used for more like a heavier battle rifle kind of deal. So I want to go ahead and skip out on that. They don't really fall in line with the sniper rifle kind of build. So let's go ahead and get started with the heavier snipers, and I'm going to be starting off with the HDR bolt action anti-material rifle. Now I want to go ahead and let you guys know ahead of time for bolt action rifles, that will be for marksman rifles and the heavier sniper rifles. Since they are bolt action, there is one stat to where it does like if I put on like larger barrels and stuff, it'll say it gives me an increased recoil control stat. You don't ever need to worry about losing recoil control or gaining any with bolt action guns, because it really doesn't mean anything to you when it comes to this. And the reason why is because when you're looking at your target, you fire off your gun, and let's say you miss or you do hit them, your gun will recenter back to the middle just like any other gun. But your gun will kick up a pretty good amount. It is a sniper, but by the time your guy pulls back your bolt or the bolt of the gun to pull it back and rechamber another round, your gun will be recentered back into, or mostly recentered back into the middle of your screen. So it just because of that animation and how long it takes for you to actually pull back the bolt and rechamber it, it doesn't really matter to one-shot kills or like bolt action guns like that. So when you ever see me losing bullet or like recoil control or gaining any, it doesn't mean anything. It's completely useless for an actual stat there. But let's go ahead and get started. We're going to be going in with the actual HDR sniper. Now for this, it's going to be a very similar trend through all these snipers. These are for the more heavier, hard-hitting snipers. So you're not going to be really aggressive with them. They're not there to be insanely fast. You're supposed to be like mostly staying out a pretty good ways back from your teammate and kind of giving them long range support with a incredible amount of accuracy and lethality. So that's kind of my opt version of this. So you could be insanely lethal while also not even really getting into the heat of the things with like close range engagements and stuff. So let's go ahead and get started. With the barrel, we want to go with the 26.9 inch HDR Pro barrel. This will make it to where your damage range is increased tremendously, even with the anti-material rifle up to like 600 meters. It is an absolute beast. You're a hit scan, but this thing makes it to where that your gun is a hit scan all the way to the back of any kind of map that's in ground war. The only time that it does not really apply to being a hit scan weapon is if you're in Warzone making a one heck of a shot across the entire map. If it's well over 1,000 meters, I'm not even sure what to say to you. Like, if you're able to see the guy, good for you. That's one heck of a snipe. But yeah, so this makes it to where that you don't need to worry about bullet velocity or damage range. You're going to get a one-shot kill no matter where you're at. So that's really there. It makes it to where that you already have the lethality and you don't need to worry about that. It does get rid of your aim down sight speed and movement speed a pretty good amount. This gun is slow, so don't worry about making it even slower. You're not going to be making it any faster. Again, like I said, you're not opping it or like building it to where it is faster for aggressive plays. You're going to be hanging back as far back as you can, and that's what you're going to be building this thing for. So don't worry about making this gun slower or any kind of build. After that, we're going to go with the muzzle. Now this is a pretty big attachment in my opinion for this kind of build. We're going to be selecting the muzzle brake, primarily for the reason because it gives you recoil stabilization. Now, like I said, recoil control doesn't really matter. That's like the vertical like kick your gun doesn't have. You don't need to really worry about that because you can always pull back your bolt, and by the time you rechamber another round, you're going to be recentered. Recoil stabilization stops the side-to-side bounce, and it also makes it to where that your gun will recenter closer to your original area that you had your sight on when you fired your gun. So it makes it to where if you miss your shot, by the time you pull back your bolt and you're able to aim back down at your target, you'll be a little bit closer to his actual body when you're aiming at him because it recenters a little bit closer to him. You get those consecutive shots off. You're a way more lethal sniper because of this. So it makes it to where that you're able to keep track of your target a little bit better when you're sniping at him if you somehow missed your first shot. The cons being aim down sight speed. Again, don't worry about it. It's already slow by default. You might as well just make it slower. Cons, this one actually does affect your sniper. It is aiming stability. That is the sway, or like how much stability you have to your gun. The stability helps out the sway to your gun. Like if you're aiming down snipers, this is where you see it the most at, and almost in every single Call of Duty game that I know of. There is a mechanic in the game where you hold L3. I don't know what you guys hold for mouse and keyboard. I'm assuming it's right click, I'm assuming, but yeah, or whatever the heck you guys hold for there. I'm not even sure, but for L3 for like console or left stick here, you will hold your breath for a couple seconds, for about 2 to 3 seconds, which normally they would have in the game, or that's how long you're able to hold it. But that'll make it to where it'll stop any kind of sway or like swaying of your gun, like left and right and stuff, where it moves around a whole lot. It makes it to where it's really hard for you to hit your target. Aiming stability is lost, and the stability makes it to where that it reduces that sway back and forth. So that does hurt your gun a little bit, but we're actually going to counteract that downside by giving it 2 attachments to help it out. And this will be by the attack laser. We are going to get a little bit of the aim down sight speed buff. That's always nice, but it doesn't really do anything when you have 2 other attachments plus a really slow speed by default. But we're going to go for aiming stability here, and that will make it to where the sway is way less for your gun. You have aim walking steadiness, which is also a plus, but you're not really going to be moving a whole lot with this gun, so I wouldn't really bother even looking at that pro. It doesn't really do anything for you. And we're going to go over to right after that, going to go over to stock, and then going all the way down to the FTAC champion stock here, and that gives you a tremendous amount of aiming stability. Now if you see down in the stat bars, your accuracy is almost at max. This will make it to where you don't need to hold L3 or the left stick anymore to actually steady your aim. It will be like almost spot on to wherever you're looking at. So you will now get rid of that fraction of a second to where you actually have to hold L3 to center onto your target and then fire. You don't need to worry about that anymore. When your scope drags onto somebody, you can go ahead and fire. You're going to have the most amount of accuracy you could possibly get, and it makes it to where it feels way better for the actual sniper when he's picking off targets. So that's why I would go with these 2 attachments. The HTR is an absolute beast when it comes to aiming stability. Of course, the cons here will be aim walking movement speed. Again, you're not going to be moving a whole lot with this gun. It's insanely slow in any kind of department when it comes to movement speed, so you're not really going to need to worry about that. Now from there, I would probably go with ammunition. If you guys want to, this is kind of up to you guys, a little bit of flexibility. I kind of go back and forth on this. You can go with a 7-round magazine. It will bump up your default magazine from 5 to 7, obviously. It doesn't give you the actual aim down sight speed penalty, even though it is stated. It does not affect anything. Movement speed is reduced by 2%, and but you know, again, you're not going to be moving. I will just keep repeating that over and over again with this. But yeah, so you don't need to worry about those two downsides really at all with this actual magazine here. Or you can go with the 9-round magazine. You get the most amount of rounds you can, and you can, like, you know, kind of stay back sniping for a longer period of time without needing to worry about ammo. And aim down sight speed and movement speed are actually drastically affected. I believe it's dropping your movement speed down by 3% and 1 or 2 frames for aim down sight, or where it actually adds on to it. So for making it your gun a little bit more bearable for you to use, like for the actual speed of it, I would go with a 7-round. You don't need to worry about that. Either way, I mean, your gun is going to kill someone in the one shot anyway. But if you don't want to do that and you want to make your gun a little bit more like for long range, I would run the variable zoom scope or the dual power thermal scope. It's really up to you guys. I run the variable zoom scope mostly because of the look of the gun, and you know, 12.6 times zoom is pretty solid for a anti-material rifle for range. So this is what I would be personally running: the TAC laser, the FTAC champion for the really important stat here of where you don't need to hold the left stick to actually hold your breath. Makes it to where that you're able to get that shot off way sooner and you don't need to worry about sway. Muzzle brake to where you can recenter back onto your target if you do miss that shot. These 3 attachments are insanely important: the TAC laser, FTAC champion, and muzzle brake. I really highly recommend putting these 3 attachments on any of your builds to the HDR. The HDR Pro, that gives you the most amount of bullet velocity, makes it to where it's a hit scan. It feels really good in any kind of ground war game or anything like that. You are going to get that one-shot kill very fast. And of course, the optic of a variable zoom scope, it's going to weigh down your gun a lot, but you get the most amount of range, so you have the most amount of accuracy out of it. And this is what I will run for the HDR almost every single time. And again, you know, I might pull off the optic and put on like one of the rounds here, but normally I'll be running the variable zoom scope. So that will be the HDR build. Right after that, the AX50. Now this is going to be a very similar build, but there is a barrel on here that I'm going to be going over. And I see people make this mistake a lot, but what I'm going to be going is going for the first barrel, which is the Sengard Arms Pro barrel. This will give me damage range, the most amount of damage range, and the most amount of bullet velocity at the cons of giving me aim down sight speed penalty. It gives me a very slight penalty to aim down sight speed, which is about a frame. But I see most people go for the much longer barrel, which is the 32-inch factory barrel. This will give you damage range, bullet velocity, and recoil control, but it gives you way more downsides to aim down sight speed and movement speed, so it weighs down your gun way more. But here's the thing, it doesn't give you as much range as the Sengard Arms Pro, because if you look here at the actual range here, in the little green there for the stat bar, I'll kind of hover over it for a little bit so you can see that, and go to here. It's a little bit less, so it doesn't give you as much range as the Sengard Arms Pro does. And you know, the recoil control, like I said, for the bolt action sniper rifles, it doesn't mean anything to it, because, you know, by the time it pulls back the bolt, range chambers it, it's going to be mostly recentered back where he was. And that is what I see a lot of people do. That's really just hurting your gun. It makes it to where it feels way better if you put the Sengard Arms Pro in there. You get way less downsides to your aim down sight speed and like actual handling to the gun, while getting a massive amount of improvements that actually go to helping your gun more than, you know, recoil control. That doesn't mean anything to a bolt action. So that's what I would select for my gun there. It makes it to where it feels way better while you get the most amount of actual useful stats out of the gun, or the actual attachment here. So after that, I'm going to go down to muzzle and select the same thing, muzzle brake, to where it helps me recenter back onto my target if I miss a shot. And, you know, it also makes it to where you can also, you know, drag over to another target if you do hit your first one. So it all around it makes it to where you're way better. So same exact thing for the HDR. That's really the same reason why I'm running the muzzle brake there. Same deal for the laser. Want to go with the tack laser. I just switched it to black because it looks better, but tack laser for the aiming stability. It's also a good plus to the aim down sight speed because the AX50 is a little bit faster than the HDR. You can definitely feel the speed difference in it, so that does help it out, feeling a little bit better. In the stock, you want to go with the very first one, which is the Singard Arms Marksman. Gives you aiming stability. Makes it to where you don't need to hold L3. Again, three very important attachments. You have to run those on both of these things if you want the most effective uh, feeling and stuff out of these actual guns. Makes it to where you are one heck of a sniper. After that, optics, I want to go run with the variable zoom scope. It gives me the 12.1 times zoom. It's a little bit less than the HDR when it comes to actual zoom level because the 12.6 is the highest you get for the HDR there. So this is a little bit less, but it's hardly really noticeable. So that's really going to be my build for this. It's really going to be all attachments up top. Singard Arms Pro Barrel, the very first one. Got to make sure you guys use that one because too many people make that mistake with the longer barrel because they see that, they're like, oh, you know, that gives me the most amount of range. It does not. And it gives you way more slower speed to your gun. So that's what I would run there. It's a pretty similar build to the HDR. It just makes it to where you're way better. Now the Rytec, this is the Barrett 50 cal, and as it's known as in real life. And this one's going to be a little bit different because unlike the other two bolt action guns, this is a semi-automatic rifle, a 50 cal rifle. So you're going to need recoil control to the highest extent. This actually does come into play. Like, recoil control definitely has an effect on your gun. So for the barrel, we're going to start off with the very first one, and I believe it's the only barrel that helps out recoil control except for Harbinger. Don't select this. I'll go over why in just a second. But I want to go for the FTAC 7 straight barrel. It gives you the most amount of bullet velocity and damage range, while giving you the second best recoil control buff out of all the barrels. But you know, the Harbinger is definitely not the way to go. I'll go over that, like I said, after I list these things. But the aim down sight speeds have been affected. I believe it goes down by 2 frames, so you kind of feel that. Movement speed has been reduced by 2%, so it's not too bad there. You're not going to be moving around with this gun a whole lot. But the XRK Harbinger, you don't want to go with this. It does give you the most amount of recoil control. As you can see down in the stat bar, it increases it a massive amount, but your bullet velocity is reduced by literally 50%. It is awful. Your gun is not built for this. It is a sniper rifle. You want the most amount of bullet velocity you can possibly get. This is kind of here to spam, like make it to where for a different build for the actual Barrett, to where you're able to spam shots off with really high accuracy, but it makes it to where it's really short ranged. So I wouldn't go with that. I would really go for the way longer kind of shots and stuff, or like kind of play for, you know, the actual 50 cal snipers here. So the 7 straight does give you a reasonable amount of recoil control. It does help you plenty. You don't really see a whole lot of a difference between that and the recoil control for the Harbinger anyway. So I would go with that. From there, muzzle. Go with the XRK muzzle tank brake, or XRK tank brake muzzle brake on here. Same exact reason for the other two builds for the snipers. Better recentering towards the middle of your screen. The underbarrel, we want to go with the bipod. Now this is one thing that is different from all the others, because again, you need the most amount of recoil you can, or recoil control you can, for a semi-automatic rifle, especially when you want to take consecutive shots at like a bunch of people. You can do that with relative ease now with all these attachments helping you out. Now I would probably skip out on the laser and stock. There is like a really bad stat for the Rytec that the aiming stability is insanely bad. Even if you put on all the attachments that help out aiming stability, it is still really inaccurate. So I wouldn't really mess around with that. Instead, I would go to your perk, and I would go with mind, or presence of mind. This will make it to where that you can extend your holding your breath for like a whole minute. So unfortunately, you do need to hold your breath for this kind of gun when you're firing at people if you want to get those good shots off on a bunch of people. or you can preemptively just hold down the left stick and then, you know, drag your gun all over the place, you know, looking for them with complete accuracy, with presence of mind. We're going to skip out on the ammunition because both the explosive and the thermite rounds reduces your bullet velocity by 25%, so we'll skip out on that. The scope for the Rytec is actually really cool because it has the most amount of default zoom, so I wouldn't even bother putting on a scope for long time zoom. You can put on the actual like variable zoom scope if you want to. It goes up to 12.6 times as much as the HDR does, but I'll skip out on that, and I would go for the really the laser, just to give you the more faster ADS speed, makes it to where it feels a little bit better. But yeah, so the only real downside to this gun is mostly putting down attachments to help out with your recoil control. It will have a pretty good amount of recoil since it is a semi-automatic. If you decide to spam with it, you don't need to. You could fire off like single shots at a time and give it time to recenter. But if you want to make it to where if you want to shoot at several people at a time, this is the way for you to go to get those consecutive shots off on people. And presence of mind to where you actually do have to hold down the left stick. It just takes a little bit more practice for this kind of gun. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. That's going to be the 3 bolt action and the 1 semi-automatic heavy sniper rifle in the game. Like I said, I'm going to be going over a second video going over the lighter marksman rifles, mostly the bolt action ones here. And yeah, so that's really going to be it. If you guys do want to see the specialty like kind of guns like the crossbow and the shotgun that I can turn into a sniper, I can definitely do a video over that. Just let me know. And yeah, so this is pretty much it. And I'll see you guys in the next one.